Welcome to EPG Pathshala. This module is linked to history and philosophy of social work. This is the final module of the taxonomy of social theories and overview of practice perspectives in social work. This is part 7, and the next part, which will be dealt by my colleague Dr. Alex Akub, will be an explanation of the practice module that we are doing right now. My name is Dr. Ruchi Sinha. I teach with the Center of Criminology and Justice within the School of Social Work, Tata Institute of Social Sciences. The objectives of this module is to help students develop an understanding of social work practice from the radical structural paradigm. It should enable you to contextualize professional social work ideologies from this perspective. It will help you understand that how radical structural paradigm is seen as revolutionaries by David Howey, and it will also introduce you to the perspectives within this paradigm, namely critical social work, anti-oppressive practice, and decolonized perspective. I am hoping that after this module, you should be able to appraise various radical structural theoretical perspectives that inform social work practice, and you should be able to contextualize these perspectives in the practice context. What we've been saying right from the beginning, that social work is context specific, and hence your practice has to be informed by the context and not purely by ideological stance. It should be able to help you discuss critically the complexities and challenges of the contemporary social work context. It will demonstrate to you how critical awareness of the structures that impact your clients' lives and how it impacts social work practice as well. And finally, the critical perspective, what does it mean and how does it get translated into practice over time. This module is linked to Burrell and Morgan's orthogonal representation through the paradigms of structuralism, functionalism, radical humanism, and radical structuralism. This module would emphasize upon radical structuralism, and it basically is within the dimensions of objective and radical change. I hope you remember that subjectivity, objectivity, and regulation and change are the two paradigms or the two dimensions within which this model has been created. So please look at figure 1. It will help you go back to the model. Thus, it's quite clear to you by looking at the model that this quadrant is committed to radical change and emancipation. It elucidates structural oppression, modes of domination, contradiction, and deprivation. This paradigm is informed by the tenets of Marx, Engels, and Lenin. It strongly believes thus that it is only through political and economic conflict and change that emancipation of persons from the social structures in which they live can be achieved. It is informed by the tenets of the conflict between the proletariat and the bourgeois. As I said, that this relies heavily on the economic system as defined by Marx and how economic system becomes predominant in one's life to be able to overtake or oversee other aspects of life. Radical structuralism, as would be evident, is based on the premise of conflict, which means that they assume the proponents of this quadrant, of this belief or of this paradigm, say that there is nothing known as status quo, there is nothing known as order. The society is always in conflict. It is only the volume of conflict or the intensity of conflict that changes. So it is the lower intensity which we tend to see as absence of conflict, and the higher intensity which in its ultimate form is known as a revolution. So basically they say that society is always in a state of conflict, and this conflict could be conflict of interest, conflict of power, conflict of access to resources, which define relations in the given society in this paradigm. So conflict focuses on the exploitation of power and the means to achieve power in society. It states that inequalities reflect exploitation of dominant segments of society over secondary segments of the society. The social change requires a move from raising of consciousness to class consciousness. So evidently, radical structuralism would include conflict theory within its ambit, which views the social world in terms of competing groups struggling over scarce resources. It is clearly focused on the macro level, and thus it examines how groups of people with power maintained or imposed their power, and how groups of people without power work towards acquiring power. This paradigm is further elaborated upon. While Marx's work was the beginning or the base of this paradigm, it has been extended by some renowned sociologists such as Adorno, Horkheimer, Coser, Dahrendorf, Collins, and Habermas. These readings have been attached to the references of the e-text. Please go through them. One thing that we have to understand here is that since the paradigm is based on Karl Marx's premise, this paradigm focuses strongly on the struggles between the bourgeois, that is the capitalists who own the means of production, and the proletariat, the masses of workers who are exploited by these capitalists. So the traditional radical structuralists looked at this economic conflict as the base or the source of conflict in society. However, the contemporary conflict theories have expanded this perspective to include conflict in all relations of power and authority. Within social work, Healy was the first one to talk about critical social work, and he discussed about the key aspects of critical theories which need to be imbibed within social work practice. And he was a strong proponent of how collective and conscious action can bring about change, and this collective and conscious action has to be taken about with the help of people by involving them and getting them together. So some of the later conflict theories include critical theory, postmodern theory, post-structural theory, post-colonial theory, queer theory, world systems theory, and race conflict approach. Now, if you look at each one of these theories, we have a practice perspective or paradigm that has developed of late. So, the queer theory has been taken within gender social work, wherein we are talking about identities way beyond feminist social work practice. So the stepping stone is feminist social work, and it goes on to identify with other sexualities as well, but it is known as queer practice social work. We have post-colonial theory, which you can see evolving as decolonized social work theory. We have race conflict approach in the indigenous social work approach that is fairly common now across schools of social work where indigenous populations exist. So in figure 2, you can see that radical structuralists are called the revolutionaries by David Howe. David Howe was very clear that people without power and resources within this paradigm are likely to suffer. In fact, the people are seen as being basically powerless, and hence the starting point is to discern the extent of powerlessness. This paradigm reveals how those who do not and cannot contribute to the economy are actually seen as problems by dominant political economic arrangements. So the whole concept of problematizing anyone and everyone who does not align to the existing norms can be seen in this paradigm by the power holders. Thus, the other population become problems. Now, who are the other population? The queer people, the people who cannot work, the people who are old and infirm, people who cannot contribute economically, which also includes children within their dominant paradigm. Thus, the other population, which is the vulnerable, the marginalized populations, then are seen as problems, and thus if they are seen as problems, the state is enforced to withdraw from its responsibilities to take care of these populations. As a result, because these are problems, it is ensured that the arrangement of resources is so organized that people with less labor skills do not get access to better resources. As a result, they have less labor skills, they have lesser potential to fight for resources. And further, as a result of this, they are forced to stay in slums or other low-income areas. Thus, within this paradigm, the othered populations become problems. Now, this othered population includes just about anyone and everyone who is marginalized and vulnerable. And marginalized and vulnerable also includes those populations who cannot contribute economically to the society. Thus, as a result, we are not only including the vulnerable, the marginalized populations. This paradigm, according to the powerful, also includes children, and hence investment in children is not seen as being economically remunerative. If this is the dominant way in which the powerful people in the society are thinking, it is clear that the arrangements in society are such that such populations are pushed to the fringes. So these people have got, because they have lesser skills, they are pushed to they have lesser access to resources. Because they have lesser access to resources, they happen to stay in areas which have got lesser resources, which in the Indian context would mean slums and low-income areas. As a result, everyone in that area has got no access or limited access to education, health, nutrition and other services. Thus, that entire population belt then gets sidelined from the resources that are prevalent or available in the society at a cost. Thus, the problem here for the revolutionary social worker is not to work with the problem people. And please remember, I'm emphasizing this, social worker is not here to work with the problem people, but to highlight the exploitative role of capitalism and its role in decapacitating people. Thus, the problem as shown by the powerful is thrown back to the powerful to say that this is not the problem. The problem is in the way you have organized the society. Practice thus has one major premise, that is, the economic and the ideological base of capitalist society needs to be explained and assessed to highlight the political genesis of suffering and exclusion. So, I hope you're clear that the problem here is not the people. The problem here is the organization of society to benefit the powerful. And because this is the problem, this is the definition of the problem within this paradigm, it is emphasized that the assessment here is of all the power holders, that is ideological, political, economic, social, which needs to be elucidated to the people who have been sidelined and oppressed, and they have to be got together to move towards removing this whole process of oppression. The aim of practice would be redistribution of wealth and power, shifting the propaganda from each according to his ability to each according to his need. I repeat, it is the aim of this practice is redistribution of wealth and power and shifting the propaganda from each according to his ability to each according to his need. If you've been hearing me carefully, this means that it is not access to resources that defines my capacity to get those resources, but it is my need and unique position that decides my access to resources. Thus, the method of practice in this paradigm is ensuring the client is aware of his or her rights, questioning the status quo. We have to get our clients to question the status quo in any given situation. Getting the clients, once they are told about the status quo, to come about and be a part of collective action, and creation of a team of social workers as against a single worker. So this means it dismantles, it removes the expert notion to a notion of teamwork and getting people together so that all people can work towards removing oppressive structures. Thus, the emphasis of practice is not to change the individual to fit the system, but to change the system to suit the needs of the individual. Howe states practitioners in this paradigm are tasked with elucidating the impact of inequities prevailing in the society, critiquing these exploitative arrangements, and getting the collective to question and remove these exploitative practices. Thus, the revolutionaries' approach has a strong emphasis on transforming society through critical thought as a starting point and revolution in the end. It's very important that the collective that is being taken together is made aware of the situation, is made aware of the context within which collective action is occurring, and they all are convinced to fight for the cause. As I've already stated in the beginning, revolutionaries' paradigm includes within its ambit critical social work, anti-oppressive practice, as well as indigenous decolonizing social work. A brief about each one of this will be shared with you. Critical social work, as most social workers know, has developed with the contribution of Folk and Healy. This happened as recent as 2002. They both believe that there are certain limitations of radical social work because of its conception of identity and power and being deterministic about the view of people. Therefore, the critique of that radical practice led to critical social work, which emerged primarily to promote social justice in both practice and policy. And hence, the whole concept, the practice base of social work shifted from ameliorating suffering to bringing about and fighting for social justice. Examining structures of oppression and how they are reproduced every day by looking at both the practitioners and the service users, which are embedded within a complex web of power relations. So it actually means that it's not only the people who have to be aware of the oppressive practices, it is also for the social worker to be aware that how that oppressive practice is also determining our outcome, and we have to be very, very careful that we do not become a part of that oppressive practice. Once you have elucidated these oppressive practices, the next is to argue, to strongly argue with facts on those ideological processes which are reproducing structures of oppression. So after arguing, we critique the dominant social science paradigm which is sustaining these oppressions, and there is a certain level of consciousness which people are brought about to be at collectively. It's very important that collectively people are got together and they have to see that history has been documented to suit certain individuals and history can be changed. And once this has been achieved, being political becomes the last strategy in bringing about change. It believes that if this political action, political collective action can be brought about, people can participate and bring about social change for themselves. So according to Iffy, he observed that there are two major perspectives in critical social work, and that is structural and post-structural. This aligns to the movement in sociological theory. So structural is based upon the Marxist premises, where the role of the structure is and the role of oppression is linked to power and class, whereas the post-structuralists reflect more upon the Foucauldian analysis that recognizes the personal and the dynamics which play out in multiple ways through which differences of power are maintained as well as created. Within the last few years, social work has developed further, and it has taken a flavor from the country in which it has been practiced. So, like in UK, Foucault's work has developed anti-discriminatory and anti-oppressive practice. And based upon the theoretical base of oppression and sustaining of oppression, work towards removing institutional and societal biases has been included in anti-oppressive practice. So what is anti-oppressive practice? According to Dominelli, anti-oppressive practice is a person-centered philosophy aimed at reducing effects of structural inequities upon people's life. Anti-oppressive approaches in social work are in response to struggles of ethnic minorities, people with disabilities, feminists in order to challenge power structures. In order to establish a transparent link between social work practice and social justice through eradicating oppression, anti-oppressive practice aims to challenge structural power dynamics. This in turn offers a better framework within which varying degrees of power dynamics, oppression and privilege at a structural level can be understood. But it's very important for us to understand that all these practices are based upon critical reflection. What is critical reflection? It is basically questioning status quo. It is about questioning whatever is happening around you and asking the basic questions. Why is this arrangement like this? Who said this arrangement should be like this? Who is this arrangement benefiting? And why are so many people suffering? If we ask these basic questions, critical reflection will enable practitioners to focus on how they construct and understand their position. It would also help them question their own practice, their own purpose, and the role and place within the dominant organization of society, the social world, the economic world, or the cultural world. As would be expected, every practice has its positives and negatives. One major critique of anti-oppressive practice is that it is largely responding to macro realities, and it misses out on the micro practice. So while there are certain paradigms which are linked only to micro practice, this practice is seen as neglecting individuals within the macro oppressive critique process. Another practice paradigm that has emerged within revolutionaries paradigm is decolonized social work, or indigenous and decolonized social work. I will not be talking about indigenous social work, because indigenous social work in India has taken the form of Dalit and tribal social work, which my colleague would be talking to you, and I hope you will go through his module. I'll be emphasizing on talking about decolonizing social work. There are a number of important themes as well as ideas that affect indigenous peoples, in particular that of colonialism, oppression, sovereignty, self-determination, as well as cultural rights. Decolonizing social work actually has its roots in history, in questioning history. So whatever history that we have of any country, it has predominantly been written by rulers and the colonizers who came here. Decolonizing essentially means understanding history and understanding whose perspective is running within the given space of state and state administration. The concept of decolonizing social work therefore is seen as, but it's not exclusively but majorly concerned with the rights of indigenous people. So if I summarize this module, I would state that it is aimed to introduce you to critical social work practice. In the given context that we are in, where there are a lot of upheavals in society, it is important for social workers to be educated about where we are and why are we here. It is important for us not to be swayed by the dominant economic and political thought, but to remain rooted, to remain grounded to the people to whom we are accountable. And hence, this module will help you examine the newer developments in social work theory, namely critical social work, including anti-oppressive social work and indigenous and decolonized social work. I hope this module will help you understand a lot of movements that are happening around the world. This module will also help you understand why working with the refugees is an important aspect for social work. Please make it a point to go back to the e-text, read it, because it will summarize whatever has been shared with you right now, and the references which will help you explore this very exciting practice perspective that exists in social work. Thank you.